and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a foundation basics 101 of how to blend your foundation using a brush versus a sponge. I'm going to be using a liquid foundation today. If you'd like to see a powder foundation video or anything like that, just comment down below if that's something you'd like to see and I can do a video for that one as well. But we'll focus today on using the beauty sponge and the brush. I'm going to kind of show you some basic maneuvers that you can use to get the best, most flawless coverage on your face using both of these. I'm going to do one half of my side using a sponge and the other half using a brush. So if you are interested in this video, don't forget to like it and also subscribe to my channel before you leave. And without further ado, let's get into the video. First thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my primer all over my face, and I really try and push it into my skin just because that kind of pushes it into the pores, even though this isn't really a pore filling primer. But I find that the primers work best when they're really worked into the skin, so that's what I'm going to do first. And I'm going to show you half on one side what it looks like with the beauty blender and how to blend it out with a beauty blender. Well, I guess a beauty sponge is technically the Eco Tools beauty blender, which is my favorite one, and it's literally like $5 and it works so well. And then the other half I'll show you just using a regular flat top kabuki brush. I'm just going to be using the Maybelline Superstay foundation. It's one of my favorite full coverage foundations, and so we're going to go in on this side with my beauty blender, and I promise you it does look a little light, and then once you actually blend it in, it kind of starts to look more like your skin and not quite so pasty. But the number one thing with the beauty sponge is that you want to bounce it. So what I mean by bounce it is just kind of pouncing it into the skin like this. And if you can tell, when I do that, it kind of, same thing as the primer, it pushes it into the skin, so that way it's not quite so noticeable. It looks a lot more natural on the skin. And that's one of the best ways that you can blend your foundation in. Really go over everything that I've done. The problem with the beauty blender side, I don't know if you can tell, but like, see how my nose is not blended in real well? It's really hard if you have deep lines like I do on your nose. But if you kind of just take it and then use the flatter side to kind of get in there in that crease and really blend it through. One thing that I will do is sometimes I'll just take my finger and really blend that. Now I'm going to show you, we're going to put just a little teeny smidgen, not very much, on there just to kind of layer it up and give even more coverage, even though you don't really have to. But this will show you how to build your foundations. And like I said, one of the easiest methods I have found for blending is just pouncing it out. As long as you pounce, and you can do the same thing with your brush, but when you pounce it, it really gets it deep into the skin. And so it doesn't look like an extra layer on top of your skin, it just looks like your natural skin. And as you can see, that's added more like level of coverage on there. If you still have redness and stuff peeking through, it's totally okay, because that's what concealer is for. So that is with the beauty blender, or I guess I shouldn't say beauty blender, beauty sponge side. Like I said, I find that this method works really well. I don't find that using a sponge versus a brush, some foundations that you want to use the sponge with, and then some foundations that you'd rather use a brush with, and it's just a matter of personal preference, the way that you like your skin to look. So don't feel like you have to get a beauty sponge. If you're used to brushes and everything, you can totally get a similar effect. Sometimes the sponges, I like them because they sheer out a foundation so it doesn't look too cakey on your skin. Sometimes I like to use a brush so that I do have more of a full coverage look. So I'm just gonna take my brush now. This is just a flat top kabuki brush, and we're gonna go ahead and go in on the opposite side and do the same type of motion. We're just gonna pounce it. And you'll see at first, this side is gonna look way more flawless than this side is, but you'll see as we work it into the skin that they'll look very similar as far as coverage and evenness. I like to go over my eyelids. It kind of skips a step for me. I don't typically use eye primers very often unless I really want my look to stay, but it's a good alternative as far as I'm concerned for an eyeshadow eyeshadow primer, just because it will neutralize any veininess that you have in your eyelids. But once again, that's just a personal preference thing. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and once again sweep over that little section. The nose is always the trickiest. That's what I have found. I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit more so we can build it up so it's even on both sides. And when I build my foundations, typically I will just put it kind of on the cheek area, because that's the place that most people are going to be looking at your face. It's right here. It's not typically going to be up near your hairline or up by your chin and stuff like that. And once again, the whole time I am just pouncing this brush. I'm not going to be really doing anything real drastic with it. It's kind of hard to show when you're using two separate methods. It's gonna look a little funky on the tip of your nose. Anyways, this is what the final look is kind of gonna look like. Like I said, I don't feel like one side is more cakey than the other or anything like that. I just feel like it's just two different types of methods that you can use. My absolute favorite way to blend out any foundation, any cream foundation, is to get a flat top kabuki brush that looks kind of like this. You want something that's gonna be a little bit dense, but it's still gonna have movement to it, because that's what's going to really drag your product around. That's one of the reasons I love this brush so much. Anything that has more of that flatter surface is going to be the easiest as far as blending out your foundations, just because it will cover more surface area. If you think about it, you're kind of stamping it on, and so you want something that's going to lay flush against your skin, not something that's rounded. Otherwise, you're going to find that you're going to have uneven coverage. So that's the number one thing I can say. You can use those little teeny, they have like a little flat, what they call foundation brushes, where you kind of just paint it on. I typically don't use those. I don't know anyone that really does use those for foundation anymore. Sometimes I'll use it to blend in my concealer in different places, but overall I really just find that anything that has a flatter top is going to be your best bet for a cream foundation. Now, if you are using a powder foundation, you do want to use something that is more rounded and tapered, that is for powder. This is a natural hair brush too, which makes it easier to pick up the product. And you do want some movement in the powder ones, just because it sits differently on the brush. When you put your foundation on a flat top brush, it's just gonna sit there and kind of absorb down. Whereas these, it'll get on all the little bristles, and then when you do the swirling motion, that's what's going to place the foundation, the powder, whatever is on your powder brush, onto your skin. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and take my Cover FX setting. This is the loose setting powder. I'm just going to take a little bit of that, and literally I just go right over everything, and with the powders you want to swirl. Now you can use a beauty sponge to put this powder on. I typically do not use powder with my beauty sponges. It's just not my thing, you know? So I'm going to go ahead and just set it with the powder brush. I always, no matter what, I don't care if it's not gonna do much difference, I always set my foundation with a powder. It just makes your makeup apply so much better. You don't have to spend uber amounts of money on something like this. They do have other alternatives at the drugstore that are like $3 and $4 that you can get, that any kind of powder is awesome. You can even take a pressed powder like this one and just dab into it and do the same thing if you really didn't want to go for something that was, you know, a loose setting powder, because they can get kind of messy. But I always set it. Typically I will set it after I'm done with all my cream products. I don't really feel like I need a lot of concealer today, just because that foundation is so full coverage. I might add just a little bit around my nose just to brighten things up, but I typically won't do this until I'll do this, and then I'll put my powder on, just so that all the cream products are down and the powder can adhere to it and make it less sticky. Like I said, that's all I'm gonna do today. I'm just gonna go over that with my powder so that way it's set. Then I am gonna go ahead and finish my face, and then I will come back at the end and kind of go over a few things with you guys. So stay tuned, I'll be right back. Okay guys, so this is the finished look. I just kind of threw something on. I'm not doing anything special today, but I wanted to incorporate some kind of greenish looks to go with my camo top here. Anyways, but I will have all the products that I use linked down below, as always. These are just basic rules that I live by as far as blending goes. It's really not too hard. Like I said, I find that when you pounce it, that's gonna give you the best, most flawless coverage because you're really working it into your skin. Same goes for the beauty sponge. If you pounce it in, I feel like it just works a lot better that way. And I hope you found some of these tips a little bit, you know, helpful. I'm gonna try and start doing some of these basic 101 type things. So I'll do another one using just concealer basics, eyeshadow basics, all that stuff, just because I find that it's nice to have something to kind of go off of. And then, like I said, you can always use whatever's gonna be easiest for you, whatever method you find works best for you. Just because this method works for me doesn't mean it's gonna work for everybody. But I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!